Hello and welcome to This Naked Chat, a podcast where 6 friends from different walks of life come together for honest, unscripted conversations about living alcohol-free and everything that comes with it. We all met at a live event hosted by Annie Grace of This Naked Mind in March of 2024. What started as a mastermind group with the 6 of us and Annie turned into some really deep friendships, filled with connection, tough conversations, and a lot of laughter. And after a year of growing and learning together, we realized that these conversations might help more than just us. So here we are, no scripts, just real talk. We are incredibly grateful to Annie and This Naked Mind for helping us get this off the ground and for the impact that her work has had on each of our lives. I am Brian, and I am joined by Kori, Agnes, Judi, Jenie, and Sammie. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's see, who do we got today? Sammie, Kori, Judi, Jenie. Agnes is out, unfortunately, today. We miss you. So here, let's get started. Here's same hat as always. Magic hat. Here we go. Topic for today. I need my stronger readers. Oh boy, here we go, Kori. Eating healthy in an unhealthy world.
Oh.
Awesome. Love it.
Next topic.
Yeah, right? This will be fun. Wow, this
Love
is
it.
And
Love
so just for context, it's a long weekend in the United States.
And here, it's a bank holiday here.
Oh, you have a bank holiday too. So
Yeah.
that tends to, at least for me, turn into some interesting eating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we
Well,
kick this off? I don't know that you necessarily put this in, Kori. I think.
I don't
Jenny
think
might
I
have,
did,
but-
actually.
Yeah.
I think that the whole eating better bit, anybody who has any kind of substance overuse, when they stop overusing that substance, their diet gets better. It doesn't have to go necessarily vegan. It doesn't have to go vegetarian. They just actually finally eat something that's not, what a little garage. What do you call those little deli marts or whatever at gas stations? Gas station meals. I don't know what to call them. Where they're just running in and buying something that God knows how long it's been sitting on the thing. I mean, I've just seen people who've walked into my office be skinny, bone thin.
Mm-hmm.
And they stop using it, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, they start to have color, they start to have all these wonderful things when they actually get some nutrients. So
I've seen that with, I'll say, quote unquote, harder drugs for sure. Meth, opiates. I've seen that a lot, like you're saying, Judi. It's funny though, alcohol seems to be different. I've observed with alcohol, it's the opposite. Like sometimes I feel like people think that, because they gave up alcohol, then it's kind of the excuse. Well, I gave up one vice, and so I can indulge in these other ones, especially in the sugar thing.
Sugar.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's a real craving for sure. But then kind of that mentality of well, I'm due, I deserve. And it's so funny to me that when we've tackled alcohol first, that and we know so much, us, right? Like anybody who's kind of delved into it as a coach, we know so much about the mental side, and yet it's really hard for us to apply that to food. And I have a couple of theories about that. One is that alcohol it's easy to draw the line, right? Like you're just saying, hey, it's toxic. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I think we struggle drawing that clear line with food, particularly because, it's more than one thing and it's just so pervasive. The unhealthy processed foods are just so pervasive. It's really hard to draw that line and say, oh, I'm not gonna have that. I mean, you might draw it okay, I'm not gonna eat French fries maybe or something, and say, oh, I'm done with French fries. But then it's really easy to again kind of glom onto whatever your replacement thing is. And a lot of that is 100% physiological. I mean, you evolve, like, for almost all of human history, you know, scarcity and survival was our problem. Not getting enough calories was our problem. And this abundance of calories has only been within the last 100 years, but you might argue the last couple hundred years. So your whole brain is literally a heat-seeking missile for what is the most calorically dense thing in my environment right now. And it will remember it, right, even subconsciously. So if, as another, I'll say influencer in this space talks about, is if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And the reason for that is that your brain, whether you know it or not, is always got it going on, you know? So there really is. And you get a hit of dopamine, kind of like alcohol. You get that reward center peaked from food. And you get it from food on purpose, right? Because that's how we all survive, right? I mean, we are from a long line of winners, right? We knew how to find food. We knew that it tasted good. Like, we got the reward. And so the fact that we're struggling with it now is not a surprise at all. You know, all the ancestors that didn't remember where food was and didn't get the dopamine hit, they died. So, you know, we're the ones that survived. You know, I find that any of the processed food, it's gonna unnaturally ring the bell of your reward center, and that you have to, ultimately, you got to get back to like this very simple, whole food diet to really kind of even out your brain, not get stuck in that. There's a whole book called The Pleasure Trap. It's such an apt phrase. But to just keep yourself out of that pleasure trap, you kind of have to just go back to the very, very basics. And you have to do all the mental exercises that we did for alcohol. Like, you know, is it really true that we need this, or that we think this is healthy, or whatever? Is that really true? You know, what are the justifications that I'm coming up in my head for why I'm continuing to eat this? You know, like, dig into what is all that relationship stuff that's going on, you know, when I feel excluded because I'm not eating, you know, grandma's chicken, whatever, you know, like you have to kind of go through it all. I mean, that's why, you know, I set up this program like The Path for that very reason, because I'm like, you have to step through every little bit. You have to learn the truth about every little bit. You have to like dig into your liminal thoughts, and like, you know, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, some people, don't get me wrong, kind of like with alcohol, you know, they've had the shit scared out of them. Like, they, you know, had a heart attack, whatever it is. And so they will cold turkey it the next day and be like, that stuff's toxic, I'm not doing that again. But that's pretty rare, right? So we like gotta dig into every little thing. And yeah, I mean, it's all about compassion too, right? I mean, that's what we all learned, that it's not your fault that you live in this crazy environment that is completely inconsistent with all of human history. And so, yeah, it's gonna be challenging, but like, the more you can dig into it, the more you can, like, you know, convince yourself that it's toxic and it's hurting you, then the easier and easier it gets. It's just like with booze, you know. But yeah, it's a challenge.
That's when Jenny said, you know, originally for weight loss, and I'm kind of in that boat as well, as like, I think I'm carrying more than necessary in my mid region right now than I normally do. But whenever I think about it from a pure weight loss standpoint, it is harder for me than when I reframe it to a, look, I know I will feel better. Like, so when I change it to a performance type mentality, you know, we've learned that with alcohol, that kind of correlation, as well as this, if you start doing it and then you start feeling that better, that's when that kind of motivation starts to come. Like, that weight loss is kind of an outcome goal almost, you know, that will happen if the process is aligned to that. And I guess to that extent too is like, we'll jump in and completely change all of it, right? Like we'll go on a giant diet instead of like, and this is just a piece that maybe works for me, but like the change small things, notice the behavior, continuing change small things over time. These same sort of behavior change patterns apply to everything. You know, right? Like, and I'm currently in it too, is like, okay, what are these things that you guys know about it with Mountain Dew? Like I had, that was kind of one of the early ones and it's sugar-free Mountain Dew. But nonetheless, you know, stopping that first and then seeing how I felt and how that affected things and be like, okay, you know, is there anything next? For me, mine's volume, just volume of food I eat is most of it.
Well, and in that's an important thing to talk about right there is volume. So you can eat large volumes of food, and you should eat large volumes of food. And when you're eating food that is lower in caloric density, so like whole natural foods, lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, that takes up a ton of space in your stomach. And that's what it was designed for, right? Like, yes, because there was enough room to fill it up with all those lower calorically dense food, because that's what you would have found in the natural environment, right? Are those vegetables and grains and beans, things that are just naturally low in calories. So you don't have to worry. Like you said, when you get all up in your head about restriction, that doesn't go well, you know, because your body's like, no, it's trying to survive. And that's all it knows is, you know, eat more to survive.
Yeah. It's hard to make a salad big enough to hit calorie restrictions, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
no, exactly. You could eat leafy greens all day, every day, and still have just a few hundred calories.
And pretty bad gas.
I have to say, I don't like the word diet, because I always think, you know, I did sort of different diets when I was growing up, but then you think it comes to an end at some point, and then you think you can suddenly eat whatever you want again, and of course then you put the weight back on and some. Like, you know, you drink more and so it's definitely not a word I like to use in my vocabulary when I think about food. I've been vegetarian since I was 11, 12, I think, and
so
I can remember
10 years.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I remember coming home from school and telling my mum I'm vegetarian, and then straight away she's like, I'm not cooking you anything different. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, it's not a problem. I'll just have whatever you're cooking, but just not the meat bit. So she did spaghetti bolognese that night for tea. So I literally, I'll never forget it. So I sat there with the spaghetti and a bottle of tomato ketchup. Because that's, you know, those days there wasn't any kind of actual sauce and everything. So, and she just obviously assumed it'd be a fad that I would go out. Certainly in the rehab, we see a lot of people that swap between, you know, eating addiction, like, you know, eating disorder and alcohol. When one, they put down one, they pick up the other. So, and don't even think of eating disorders as an addiction, but it's still all those same thoughts and feelings.
Well, and as you say that, and I got to think, Judi, about what you were talking about, I have seen like severe alcoholics where they only drink. They really didn't eat anymore. They just drink. And then you do see once they are able to put that aside, then they can get nutrients. But like, I would say like most of us, what I observed is we like stopped drinking and then we like went all in on M&Ms or something, you know?
Well, that sugar thing though is real, right? I mean, that sugar thing was your body's detoxing from all that alcohol, sugar.
Some years ago, kind of along the lines of eating healthy in an unhealthy world, and this is front of mind right now because we're traveling for 5 days starting tomorrow. And some years ago, my husband got diverticulitis very, 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 very badly. And he had a microperforation, and thankfully it could have been worse and wasn't. But anyway, I, as his physician wife, never wanted him to be that sick again. And he was, of course, refusing the follow-up studies to determine if he was at risk for having more. So I'm like, all right. Meanwhile, one of my practice partners, who at that time was in his 40s, was navigating his 6th bout of diverticulitis within about 18 months. I mean, it was bad. And my practice partner, Andrew, was at the point where he made an appointment with a surgeon and said, take it out. I'm not going to live like this. I mean, that's how bad it was, because he was basically living on antibiotics and feeling like crap. And this GI surgeon said, okay, I will, but I want you to try this diet for 6 months. And if you have a breakthrough episode within that 6 months on this diet, I will do what you're asking, but do this for me first. And it was a thing called the simple carbohydrate diet, which does involve meat, but also is very strict with the other things, in that they're simple carbohydrates, not complex carbohydrates. So you automatically eliminate bread, grain, dairy, a lot of the starchy vegetables, you eliminate those. And this whole thing was created by a biochemist whose daughter back in the 70s had Crohn's disease, her little daughter, like 10. And this biochemist was trying to find a way to help her daughter not have flares. So this biochemist went to her biochemistry lab and figured out with test tubes what was making her daughter's colon or small intestine inflamed, and decided it was these complex carbohydrates, because the way we farm in this country, as we all understand now, has changed, not in a good way, since, for example, the 18th and 19th centuries, before we started modifying everything. So wheat now is not the wheat of the 1800s. And much to what Kori speaks in terms of evolutionary biology, our bodies have not yet adapted to process what is our food, so-called, now, no matter what it is. All right, so that's her theory, and she gives a pretty strict outline. And my partner, Andrew, this was now 7 years ago, and he hasn't had a bout since then, and he's still on the diet and happy as a clam. So back in the day, like 6 years ago, I brought this to my husband, and I said, what do you think? He read the book. He said, I'm in. So we did it, and we did it together. So great. It was really hard, and what was hardest for me was the grains, because I love me my grains. I do. The other stuff was not that hard. I dropped a bunch of weight. So did my husband, which wasn't such a good thing. But what was fascinating is my husband also has rheumatoid arthritis, and he then had it pretty bad and was pretty restricted in terms of bending, doing certain things, all of that. After about 3 months on this diet, he had some funny skin rashes that went away. He was able to squat all the way down and get up and do pretty much anything you wanted without compromise. And he came off the prednisone that he had been on for 20 years. He got totally off of it. But what was fascinating to me was the literal demonstration, never mind the diverticulitis thing, but that his immune system changed as a result of not having this extraneous stuff poured into it, and arguably, and now clearly to me, activating his immune system. It was utterly remarkable. Okay, long-winded background, but in terms of living with this in an already unhealthy world, we did a lot more traveling back then, and I live my life needing to know when I get to eat next. Like, I'm a little bird, and I need to be fed about every 2 hours. I'm a snacker. And I thought, what the fuck am I going to do when we're in an airport, you know? What was interesting to me is it made the choices so much easier. There's so much I can eliminate right off the bat, and I can hone in. It was so easy. And just in these last few days, as I'm thinking, we're traveling tomorrow, and I always stress about what am I going to eat and when am I going to eat when we're traveling. I'm like, let's adopt that mentality and just try this on while we're traveling, and remember how good it felt to make it be so easy to make choices back then when we did this together. Sorry for the long-winded story, but the background seemed important, and the immune system part still fascinates me.
I mean, I've seen it many, many, many times. Autoimmune conditions that are reversed whenever people, go to a whole food diet, and it's, I mean, we're really just, I mean, we have we have the population studies, and we even have some, control trials for sure that we can see this kind of reversal. But now we're starting to dig into the mechanisms, right, for that. A lot of it has to do with our microbiome, for sure. And, fiber in all of its forms are what feed all of those gut bugs. And it's just fascinating, this whole this whole domino effect whenever you feed those gut bugs, which, by the way, this is one of the things that people don't know. You are less human than you are microbes and other non-human cells. You have more non-human cells than you have human cells. So it just makes so much sense, to feed those good guys, right? They've been along the ride with us over these 2 million years. And so it totally makes sense that they evolved right along with us, and we gotta feed them for all of the rest of our stuff to work, as it should.
Do you think though, so on Jenie's example there, it was targeting specifically complex carbohydrates, right? Which I think this is a piece for me, where people will find something that works for someone else and apply it to themselves. And I think what's important in that sort of a study is and it's the same thing with what we're talking about with vegan and whatnot, is you kind of do have to maybe find what works for you. Because I think complex carbohydrates can be sweet potatoes, beans,
yes,
right?
Well, and let's not forget, I mean, she's talking about number one, and N of 3 if she includes herself, so there's that. And then also that those people were already sick, Peter and your practice partner, who they were already sick, and so it makes a lot of sense that they can't just jump all in for a complex carbohydrate, tons of fiber and stuff. It's kind of like when people say that when you were talking about a salad giving you gas, or people say that beans give them gas or whatever. Well, the reason for that is that your gut bugs you don't have enough of the good gut bugs that are going to eat, all of that fiber. And so you do have to ease yourself into it. If beans give you gas, then you eat a tablespoon today. You eat a tablespoon for a couple of days. Then you ate 2 tablespoons. And then next thing you know, I mean, literally, I can eat a couple cans of beans, and I don't. Yep. I feel nothing, right? It's like a normal course of the day, and so for sure. And people who have literally damage. That's what diverticulitis is this pretty catastrophic damage to your intestines. So yeah, they just need things to be moving is what they need, right? A good just things to keep on processing. So at some point, now that it's been many years, probably can get into the complex carbohydrates, that kind of thing. But I'm always an advocate of going, easing yourself into it. I mean, I truly, you're right. You got to see what works for you. But also we have so much data that says, that literally, in 100% of the cases, we've reversed heart disease, as an example, right? People with advanced heart disease, and 100% of the cases, they reverse them when they adhere to a whole food, plant-based diet. So we know that, there's nothing to argue with it. But to your point, unless you've had the crap scared out of you with advanced heart disease, that's probably not going to be an easy thing for you to just turn the dime on tomorrow. So ease your way into it, figure out what, you can easily adhere to at first, and kind of keep progressing. You'll observe, what symptoms get better. And when you do the mind work and you're like, holy crap, I really do feel better. I really do, I really do have things moving in my gut. Oh, I really can eat, more and more beans. Like you're gonna keep, and like Sammie was saying, you can't treat it like a diet. You can't think about it restriction. You're just like all of the mind ninja stuff that we know, you gotta embrace that and then, figure out what works in your daily life.
This episode is sponsored by This Naked Mind, a revolutionary approach to changing your relationship with alcohol. When it comes to your drinking, you don't have to hit rock bottom to want something different, and you don't have to do it alone. This Naked Mind blends neuroscience, psychology, and self-compassion to help you stop relying on willpower and start creating real, lasting change. No shame, no labels, and no rules. Whether you want to take a break, drink less, or stop drinking for good, This Naked Mind has a program that meets you where you are, with world-class coaching and a compassionate, judgment-free community to support you every step of the way. Learn more about This Naked Mind at thisnakedmind.com.
There's so much information out there in the world, and so like what you're talking about there, Kori, was like, okay, but we know enough. That's what I was trying to maybe get to, is like, what are those things that people could start, right? Like you say, whole food, plant-based. Even that whole food is a big term, I guess. So how would you kind of define some of that?
Before we jump into all that, though, I mean, we're talking a lot about the physiological effects that are really beneficial in changing our diet and finding a diet that works for us, right? But there's also a ton of mental health benefits, because 95% of our serotonin is in our guts, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that till about a year ago either.
Yeah,
So
and
true, Judi.
I personally, I used to be, I mean, since high school, I've been on antidepressants, right? And when in everything, every doctor wanted to play with something. Let's give it to Judi. I personally, when I finally started reading about healthy, I lost 70 pounds, but my serotonin, I got off a ton of antidepressants, a ton of them. And I've not had to go since, because, your norepinephrine, your serotonin, your this, your that. Yep. Well, that's all well and good, but my gut flora was out of whack bad.
Such a great point. And there's all kinds of research that supports
totally
that as well.
backs that up, right? And that's why I jumped into that, because I'm like, I'm tired of being victim to big pharma. Yep. I'm tired of being slave to this medication, because I was on it for years and years and years, and I thought I'm going to be trapped on this forever. But I wasn't. I'm not, because I was able, in changing my diet, and really, dropping the weight was a byproduct, but changing my diet for my mental health so I could drop all the pharmaceuticals.
I think that's a really good point, Judi, because I think actually that's more, certainly for me, that would be more appealing, to think that if I made some changes in my diet, that it's really going to influence my mood and my energy levels and my sleep and.
Well, it gets back to Jenny's original piece of feeling better, right? Like that's what we're actually shooting for. Well, when we remove the weight, like I think, Judi, that's a great point. Is like that was a byproduct. That's what I found as well. It's like when I started fueling to like feel better, or the weight happened because I was eating the way that my body needed me to eat, I guess.
Well, and there's
the problem is though, when you start to feel better. And then your emotions start to balance out and your serotonin's cool. You go, oh, now I've totally plateaued. Shucks. It's like, all right, where's the motivation to get on that running wheel?
Good point.
Yeah.
But to that point of Judi's, there also is an increasing body of evidence that some types of real life biochemical depression, as distinct from situational depression, and not all forms of biochemical depression, but some are autoimmune based. There is an increasing body of evidence that supports that, which is fascinating.
I don't know if you know of Terry Walls. Terry Walls is, and my sister, at one point, she has MS, and my sister, who has MS, at one point, she wasn't walking. She was wobbly all over the place. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. To say that she doesn't have flares and whatnot, she does have flares, but she's walking because she changed her whole diet. She did the supplement protocol. She did the greens and all of that stuff. And it's like, in my opinion, it's just God gave us what we need.
So we've said a few things about science backed. That's where I was going. And to Judy's point there, when we say there's tons of studies, what do we know? We could start with the mental health. We could start with the physical health too, whatever. What do we know? Right?
Sugar is bad. That's what we know.
Right,
we know.
That we know.
I guess what my question was, and even I think Judy's point was even better, is like, okay, when we say there are studies about this way of eating will help mental health, what are those studies saying that we're eating? You said whole foods, plant-based several times.
We should probably I always like to give people a little bit of a primer on research, right? So research has, like everything, there's all kinds of variability in the quality of research and your ability to make direct cause and effect kind of, associations, right? So we have kind of, an underlying factor of all of this, right, is that kind of more is better as far as your data points go. So, larger population sizes are always better to give you better confidence that these effects are real, and that hence they could be applicable to a broader population at large. But as far as how the research is conducted, a lot of times you'll see these observational studies, right? These population studies where the researchers go in and then they are trying to gather data on a whole bunch of factors, and then through statistical methods, then they can tie, get correlations, right? Things, they know that these things are correlated. It's not an accident because of their prevalence within the populations, right? That's not enough to say that it's a cause and effect. We just know that these two factors are tied in some way to each other. But it could be one's causing the other one, and, who knows which way they're causing it, or maybe there's other factors that they didn't get data on that's causing both of those effects that they're seeing. So that's one thing. But I think those studies are really helpful because that gives people a place to start looking, right? That's the cause for further follow-on studies. Once you observe something in a large population, then you're like, okay, now we can start digging into it. Then at the total other end of the spectrum is a randomized controlled trial, which is where drug companies, for example, are held to the standard. Oh, I should say a double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial, so that they are, you have a control group and you have a intervention group, and both of those groups get some kind of pill, whether it's the actual intervention pill or placebo. And the doctor that's administering, or the researcher, whoever's administering the drug to the patient, they also do not know whether the person is getting the, the real intervention or the placebo. That's due to a whole bunch of things. We know the placebo effect is real. We know that when, doctors or researchers that are, if they know, who's getting the drug, the real drug or not, that can have an effect on the study. So that's the total opposite end, where they've kind of controlled everything possible. So a lot of times what we see in the news, for example, you'll hear this news about that there's these two things are correlated, but the news makes it sound like, oh, well, this caused the other thing, when really, there's some that have to do with behavior that are always in the news, kids involved in gun violence, had,
one parent homes.
More, right. Yeah. One parent homes. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, wouldn't blue zone type stuff be an example of some of that too?
That is right. Blue zone is an observational. That's correct. And so that's a great example of where Dan Buettner went about, and he tried, well, he wasn't him, actually. the term blue zone came from some research that was already existing, and he kind of dug into it and interviewed the researchers and stuff. But yes, it's a great point. So that is all observational research. But then what we do is we say, oh, this is really interesting. Now, is there already some research that has anything to do with these, or can we go do some more research, an actual controlled trial where we can start to try to determine a cause and effect amongst these, variables? It's interesting. It's all interesting, and it all gets us closer and closer to, a real answer. But what's funny is, like, so much of this we have known for so long. For example, the fact that high-fat diet causes insulin sensitivity, we've known that for 100 years. We have known that you can essentially turn on your inability to use insulin with a high-fat diet for literally 100 years. I always like to go to research that says we can demonstrate it was an actual intervention, it was an actual control, and one study is typically not enough, right? We want to look at meta-analysis, which is where there's multiple, lots of data. We can start to, see that, or we can look at, even if it wasn't an official meta-analysis, let's say, but if we can look at, 50 different studies and we can say, yes, the factors all seem to the way they were controlled is relatively similar, and we can see that this is all the prevalence of this is giving us, pointing us in this one direction. You have to be very skeptical whenever you hear things in the news. Like you said, Brian, it's all over the place. Yep. And so it's really, and it's really unfortunate because people, they don't know. And unless you go and look at the research yourself, you won't really know, what were the factors there? Or, was it a good faith study, or was it funded by industry that, they right. Barely change the variables so that it looks like there's no problem with, eating whatever,
We, as maybe society or the online people or whatnot, have made this overly complicated, right? Mm-hmm. And yep. To start, this is why I keep going back to what you said, even if you just take the whole food, right? Yep. And whatever that means. Do you have a good definition for whole foods?
My definition of a whole food is when you're eating food as close as you can to the way that it came out of the ground.
Yep.
So I'd wonder, and that would hit on what Sammie's talking about, probably what Judi's talking about, what Jenie's talking about. Is that sort of a starting point? So yep. say like Jenie and I are two people who are looking to, we say, lose weight and feel better. Lose weight, we know. Well, Kori, correct me if I'm wrong. What does it take to lose weight?
So it's slightly complicated. So most people will say you need to be in a calorie deficit. That is kind of true, except that we also know from research that when you eat is important. So the same a calorie in the morning is not the same as a calorie at night. The earlier you can eat more of your calories, the less it counts, if you will. And other health outcomes get worse, by the way, the later you eat. So even if you, for example, even if you, they've done research where they kept people at the same weight on purpose, but varied the time of day that they were eating, their cholesterol, for example, goes up just because they eat more of their calories at night, for example.
Kori, can I just, when you say at night, because I'm just thinking, because I spent years doing night shifts, is that related mm-hmm. to the typical, as in you're thinking if you're awake and working the day and then you're sleeping at night, as opposed to the hours of the day and night? Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, working at night is a whole other thing. There's all kinds of research. Yeah. I hate to tell you this, Sammie, that night shifts are bad for you. Yes, it messes up your insulin, it messes up your cholesterol. So yeah, working at night also. But I don't know if I've ever seen a study where they specifically tried to compare eating times if you're work if you're conscious during the night versus conscious during the day. I just know they've looked at other, health outcomes for night shifts. Yeah. But by and large, let's say for a regular schedule, then the earlier you eat, the better, and the fewer calories you consume before, as you basically want to like eat as few calories as possible the closer to time that you go to bed. Okay. So your point about weight loss is it sort of depends. I mean, you kind of need to be, yes, calorie deficit is important. However, there's still some difference there depending on the time of day that you eat those calories.
But to even eat at a calorie deficit, right? Mm-hmm. Which we need to know a deficit of what, right? So that's the first step too, right? Is say, okay, I need to get to, I know what
and to your point about like overcomplicating. I mean, yes, you can sit here and try to estimate because that's all you're ever going to have. You're not ever going to know what your basal metabolic rate is, and then getting an accurate measurement of how many calories you're burning for movement. Again, a whole bunch of assumptions are built into that. So it's kind of a guesstimate. To your point about making it simple, I always just say, look, if you eat whole food, right, you will naturally. It will happen naturally. Like you don't have to you don't need to track. There's no tracking required if you eat whole natural food.
And lots of water, Kori? Is water a big...
Yeah, water is good. It's funny. A lot of people, I find water to be helpful. It's not, trust me, I eat so many plants. And certainly I don't think I would get dehydrated from like, if I just, ate my plants and just kind of drank when I was thirsty. A lot of people recommend, a lot of physicians say, oh, you don't need to like specifically try to drink water. I have not found that for myself. I feel better when I just kind of drink water all through the day, and not, now, do you have to like get all obsessed with trying to, drink your gallon every day? Probably not. But I personally, and maybe it's something to do with my climate that I, live in versus what other people have experienced. But I think water is helpful personally, not just for weight loss, but for, just generally feeling better and kind of feeling satiated and all that.
Yeah, it definitely affects my energy levels and headaches. I know if I've not drank water all day, I always have a headache.
Can I say something about water as the nephrologist in the room? Our life. None of us drinks enough. We think we do, but we don't. And I know this for, my entire career analyzing people's 24-hour urine volumes. What's interesting to consider, in addition to the fact that the volume of water in your stomach turns on your satiety center in your brain and tells your brain you're full, that's a win. Before you recognize you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. That's a fact. It's
yep.
Thing. And the thirst center is very near triggers for both hunger and, guess what? Anxiety. You can feel anxiety in your body or mild anxiousness or discomfort. The superpower is drink an 8 or 10 ounce glass of water and wait 5 minutes and don't do anything else. And I almost guarantee you will notice that has ebbed. Why? Because you drank water. Now, yes, of course, there are, a bazillion other variables in that. But subconscious, if you will, thirst is a direct activator of our anxiety for all of the reasons about survival that Kori was talking about before. So drinking water, which is the purest form of hydration, put all the additives that are on the market, just forget them. They're stupid.
Yeah.
Not necessary. Yeah. Water, water, water. And
I do think it's important, though, Jenie, to say, because I know people that you can really mess up your electrolytes and things if you do drink, because you're saying just drink loads of water. There is the opposite. You can drink too much.
But honestly, it's pretty difficult to do, literally, unless you, and Sammie and I am sure have seen patients do this, put your mouth around a shower head. That's literally almost the only way, unless you have underlying liver or kidney disease in particular. That's literally almost the only way you can take yourself into life-threatening categories, and there are usually other reasons that you're doing that. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you, Kori, but I just...
No, your point about anxiety, that's interesting. That's probably, well, whole natural foods have a lot of water in them already, which is why some people, if you're eating a whole natural food diet, then, you probably don't have to think a whole lot about your water intake. But also, that's a good point about the anxiety. That might be one of the mechanisms why anxiety dials down naturally, because you're just like well hydrated when you're eating whole natural foods. And then to your point about weight loss, Brian, that's one of the reasons that it's easy to lose weight eating whole natural foods, because there's a lot of water. It triggers that satiety mechanism. You feel full and you really haven't consumed very many calories.
I was just going to say, because I was lucky enough to spend a few days at Kori's house, and obviously I ate some wonderful food. I have to say my digestive system worked beautifully. This is like going back to England. But honestly, it really did make a huge difference, even just within a few days. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah. And energy levels as well. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting, and maybe that's one of mine. I mean, for me, I think there's an awareness here just of what I need to look at, and this is kind of, I brought this up with the sugar-free Mountain Dew, but just going about my day, eating what I eat, and noticing where they're not whole foods maybe is kind of my first step to say, all right, this is what I'm saying. And, because to your point, when we were out in Denver and you guys feed me, that food,
tomatoes.
I felt like I was going to explode, bloated wise, like the entire trip. So, so to me, that tells you what Kori was saying, about, all right, my body's not used to that. And
to get period of adjustment is required.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'm going to start this thing.
Well, to that point, I mean, that's, I'm always an advocate of just kind of this slow, step through process. Right. But if you're eating, Pop-Tarts for breakfast, right, then just switch that one thing out, right? Yeah. Eat an apple and some oats. Start there. Just the one thing, and I guarantee that will already start having an impact. And then you'll start growing the right microbes in your gut so that you can digest that properly. Okay, that's a win, right? Success. Then you move on to the next thing. All right, maybe at lunchtime, I don't have to change the whole lunch, but maybe I could just add, a side salad or some whatever, whatever your veggie of choice is. Just adding these things, like you said, Brian, if your go-to is for a snack, I would eat some commercially produced granola bar or protein bar or whatever, be okay, I'm going to opt for the apple instead, just making those little observations and just pick one thing at a time to slowly start making those changes.
The biggest thing I learned was when you grocery shop, go to the outside perimeter of
that's a really good one.
Yes, stay in the produce.
When people say, well, I don't know how to buy whole foods, just stay. I mean, I've read that in so many books. Stay to the outside perimeter of the grocery store. The minute you get in those other aisles, everything's processed, and you might as well go right down the housekeeping aisle and drink some of those chemicals, because that's what you're getting in the food.
That's what I was saying about the simple things, Judi. That's a great one.
Well, it is.
And a top tip on that as well, don't go food shopping when you're really hungry.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, but if you're really hungry and you go food shopping and you just stay to the outside perimeters,
you could eat the entire outer perimeter and be fine.
And do loads of steps whilst you're doing it.
That's right. Because then if you forget that, I didn't get lettuce, and you're already in dairy, you got to go back to the lettuce, right? That's the whole other end of the store again. And I do think if you have to pay attention to it, and you do feel better, but sometimes I think our moods, or depending on what our life is about, I'm one of these emotional eaters, so I jump back in when I'm feeling like crap. Oh, let's just go eat crap. I mean, it's kind of like you watch what you eat, you know how you're feeling, but then, I mean, you know how you're feeling, and that's what you buy, but then when you eat the crap that you buy, that's how you feel. I mean, so it's you're kicking yourself in the foot, or kicking the butt, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Anyway,
compounding the problem.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
I am reasonably horrified when I watch what kids eat now.
Yep.
And I think a lot about how that's affecting their brains and their cognitive abilities and their critical thinking and their mental health and all of it. And to that point, I heard a horrifying story not all that long ago about breakfast cereal. Let's just pick that one. And that's, I'm so now grateful to my mother, who at the time I resented because she wouldn't let me have any of the, all of my friends got to have sugared cereals. And it turns out that the dyes are actually petroleum based.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, Fruit Loops being the most, I hope they're not a sponsor, most
They're not now.
example. And I just think that illustrates the point to keep in mind, what are we feeding our kids? So those kids that we all have in our lives,
Yep.
I think it matters for us to be examples to them for
Totally.
being well and
Shop around the periphery.
Yep. And it's not victimless. I mean, people think that like you can get away with whatever when you're a kid. They've literally done like postmortems on kids that died from like trauma and stuff. And they like some kids as young as 4 years old already had evidence of heart disease.
Wow.
Up to like half of them had evidence. They think the oldest was like 15 years old. So it's not that you're not getting away with anything because you're young. It's happening. It's just that because it takes so long for you to finally have a major event that, we think we're getting away with it when we're kids.
That'd be a good discussion, because I see that a lot with like my kid only eats this, so that's what they feed them. That could be a whole different topic that we
Yeah.
have.
Don't even get me started with
Yeah.
it. Oh my God.
And I just really quickly, I think the dental tells the story as well.
Yes.
Lots of films. Yeah.
Hey, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If something we said resonated, made you laugh, or made you think, we'd love it if you share it with someone who might need it too. And if you're curious about going alcohol-free or just ready to feel more connected to yourself, check out This Naked Mind. Annie's work brought us all together, and we're so grateful for the impact it's had. On that note, a big thank you to Annie Grace and This Naked Mind for making this podcast possible. We'll see you next time on This Naked Chat.